Week 3. How safe was it to speak your mind under Henry VIII? Okay, so our key words this week are, and people. Thomas More. He was a Catholic and a key advisor to Henry until he abandoned the Catholic Church. We have Thomas Cromwell, a Protestant and key advisor to Henry until he abandons him and returns to more Catholic beliefs. So Henry VIII abandons Thomas Cromwell. We have Cardinal Reginald Pole, an enemy of Henry, who criticised his changes to the church and then became an advisor to the Pope. We have the key word heresy, or to be a heretic, which is a belief or opinion that goes against what the church says you should believe. If you are found guilty of this, you are labelled a heretic and you are likely to be executed by being burned alive. Terrible. Robert Aske, another key figure, leader of a rebellion against Henry's Protestant changes in closing down the monasteries. Heir, a person who inherits from you after your death. At the time, Henry was desperate for a male heir for his throne as King of England. Rebellion, going against or resisting someone with power. Hanged, drawn and quartered, a method of execution too gruesome to describe. This is horrible, horrible way to die. Last week, we saw that it was extremely dangerous to criticise the Catholic Church at the start of the 1500s. Martin Luther was on the run for his whole life, and William Tyndale hunted down for over a decade before he was betrayed and executed for translating the Bible into English. Yet Tyndale's work had a huge effect on England. With the Bible in English, Protestant ideas spread quicker and more people became Protestant. Most importantly, people around the king, Henry VIII, became Protestant. And soon there was a Protestant Church of England. But under such a ruler as Henry, was it safe to speak your mind? Early Henry, great defender of the faith, and Thomas More. Henry grew up as a strong, committed Catholic, as all kings and queens of that time would have. In fact, he was such a Catholic that in 1521 he wrote a book against Luther, where he called him a venomous serpent and a plague. In reward for his efforts, the Pope gave Henry the title the Defender of the Faith. Henry married Catherine of Aragon, a Catholic princess who gave birth to their daughter named Mary, who was also brought up as a Catholic. At the same time, Henry and his Catholic supporters persecuted anyone brave enough to openly question the authority of the Catholic Church. Alongside his advisor and Lord Chancellor Thomas More, Henry ordered 6 Protestants to be burned at the stake for heresy. One of them, James Bainham, was a lawyer who expressed Protestant ideas and was said to have been personally tortured by Thomas More. It is also speculated by some historians that Thomas More's spies were crucial in catching and burning William Tyndale, as seen in week 2. At this time, it was clearly not safe to speak your mind if you were a Protestant or supporter of Martin Luther. Henry's Church of England and Thomas Cromwell. Everything changed in 1533. Henry had wanted a male heir, but had been unable to produce one with his wife Catherine of Aragon. Sexist attitudes at the time required the King of England to provide a son to take the throne after his death. Henry had decided the only way to solve the issue was to marry another woman, Anne Boleyn and to try to have a son with her. To do this legally, he needed to cancel his marriage to Catherine, which would be an admittance that he had lied to God when making his marriage vows. The only way for this to not be a sin was if the Pope, the head of the Catholic Church, would give his approval. But the Pope was unwilling. Henry was stuck. However, at this time, Henry and a new advisor, Thomas Cromwell, devised a new plan. In 1533, he began creating a whole new church, the Church of England, and declared Henry the supreme head of it. No longer was the Pope the only person who could authorise the cancellation of the marriage to Catherine. Instead, the Archbishop of Canterbury, the new leader of the church, was able to do so. By 1534, Henry had cancelled his marriage to Catherine, married Anne Boleyn, and become head of a whole new Church of England. The Pope and the Catholic Church no longer held power in England. The middle of Henry's reign. Protestants begin to speak their mind. With Henry having left the Catholic Church and the authority of the Pope, Protestant ideas began to spread across the country, under the influence of Thomas Cromwell. For instance, Cromwell, with Henry's approval, executed notable Catholics who refused to swear an oath of loyalty to the new Queen and the Church of England. This included the very same ex-friend of the King, Thomas More, who had executed others for heresy only years earlier. More was executed for speaking his mind on the new Queen Anne Boleyn, refusing to accept that Henry's marriage to Catherine had been rightfully cancelled. Henry also sought to try and kill another enemy of Anne and his changes to the church, Reginald Pole. Pole was suspected to be planning to replace Henry as king if there was a successful Catholic rebellion against Henry. Pole hid in Rome and became a cardinal and advisor to the Pope. The person in charge of running the new Church of England, Archbishop Cranmer, was supportive of Protestant ideas and thinkers. It became safe to speak about some Protestant ideas in England for the first time, such as translating the Bible into English. The Bible was eventually fully translated into English in 1539. Henry's son Edward had Protestant teachers, and he was brought up as a Protestant, the first future monarch to be so. Henry closed down all the monasteries in England, where lots of Catholic monks and nuns lived, and sold the land off to make lots of money. This angered many Catholics, and was resisted by thousands in 1536 in a rebellion known as the Pilgrimage of Grace. Its leader, Robert Aske, spoke his mind and declared that he was saving England from heresy by defending the monasteries. Aske was hanged, drawn and quartered, or executed, in 1537. (1540) Cromwell's decline and Henry's slight reversal. However, despite Henry's success in setting up the Church of England, he was never fully comfortable with Protestant ideas and was fearful of rebellions from his own people, as in 1536 with the Pilgrimage of Grace. Henry grew tired of Anne Boleyn, who had failed to produce a son. Their daughter was Princess Elizabeth. He took advantage of a scandal to execute Anne, and then married another woman, Jane Seymour, with whom he produced a male heir, Edward. Seymour tragically died in childbirth, and Henry started to suspect his religious changes had led him to become cursed. When his fourth marriage, to Anne of Cleves, quickly failed, Henry blamed his advisor Thomas Cromwell and had him executed. Archbishop Cranmer, despite also being a known Protestant supporter, managed to survive. After the death of Cromwell, Henry began reversing some of the Protestant reforms he had made. Even the Bible that Cromwell had fought so hard to be translated was threatened. Henry ordered it should not be read by any women or lower classes. In fact, Protestants who denied the Catholic faith were persecuted and even burned as heretics, such as the monk Robert Barnes. It had become safer to speak your mind as a Catholic again. Henry died in 1547 as an old man, having had 6 wives and effectively 3 different religious periods during his reign. Early on, Henry had been a devout Catholic. He had then promoted Protestant ideas before returning to Catholicism. His funeral service was strictly Catholic, with priests chanting in Latin and prayers said for his soul on its journey through purgatory. When was it safest to speak your mind under Henry VIII? Well, it depended which religion you spoke for and when you were speaking. Week 3 tasks. Please complete all the tasks. If you can, please do the challenge. Number 1. Copy all of the keywords into your digital exercise book. Number 2. Answer the following questions in full sentences in your exercise book. Why was the Pope such a supporter of Henry VIII as King of England early on in his reign? B. Why did Henry fall out with the Pope and the Catholic Church? C. What new plan did Thomas Cromwell find for Henry in order to get his marriage to Catherine cancelled? D. Give 2 ways in which Henry, alongside Thomas Cromwell, encouraged Protestants to speak their mind in the middle part of his reign. E. Why did Henry begin to reverse back towards Catholicism in 1540? F. What happened to Robert Barnes, and what does this reveal about the final period of Henry's rule? Challenge questions. What were the G. What were the 3 different periods of Henry's rule described above? H. When was it safest to speak your mind as a Catholic under Henry VIII? Please explain. I. Was it ever safe to speak your mind as a Protestant under Henry VIII? Please explain. Number 3. 3A. Complete the crossword below. 3B. Complete the Google quiz on Google Classroom that relates to Henry VIII and his changes. 4. Look at Figure 10, the frontispiece to Tyndale's Bible. What would... And please answer the following questions. A. What would have been shocking to those living at the time when seeing this book? B. What do we know happened to Tyndale for creating this book? C. What does the fact it was produced in secret suggest about the time? Was it completely safe to speak your mind as a Protestant at that time? Please explain. Challenge. Imagine you are Archbishop Cranmer, writing at the end of Henry's reign in 1547. Write a private diary entry explaining when it was safest to speak your mind and when it was most dangerous. Crossword is here.